Kotaku had a long interview with the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, and there's a ton to unpack. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. If you're new to this channel and you want to see update on everything for the next generation, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. I'd really appreciate the support to help this channel grow. Anyways, let's get into it. So Xbox's Phil Spencer, who is the boss, the head of Xbox, had a long interview with Kotaku, and he went over pretty much everything you want to know about the Xbox Series X, S, and the future of Xbox, and a lot of burning questions that people have. So we started off with talking about the Xbox Series X versus the Xbox Series S and his thoughts on it, which ones he's using, what he thinks about them, and all of that great stuff that everyone wants to know about. First thing he went over is which one he thinks he's going to sell more, and he made a really good point. He says that at launch, the Xbox Series X he thinks is going to sell more because generally when a console launches, you get those early adopters who want to buy the leading edge in the console market. And he thinks that Xbox is going to sell every single unit of the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S that Microsoft is able to ship out at launch, saying, "I think we'll sell every unit of both of them that we can deliver. I think demand is just going to outstrip supply of pre-orders for us and PlayStation. I think the manufacturing supply chain is going to dictate the share more than anything else." So that's not something that we are surprised to hear, as we have been hearing about all of the pre-order craziness that's been going on. The second the consoles went up for pre-order, they sold out in like a matter of minutes. People waiting outside for hours and 24 hours and more to get in line for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X pre-order. So it's been absolutely crazy. We know with COVID and everything that the supply chain is going to be reduced. It's going to be harder to get everything out. So PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S are both going to be completely sold out at launch. Now, will there be any when you walk into a store on day one, if you wait in line? I thought I heard that there will be, at least for the Xbox Series X and S. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, on day one when these consoles are released. Now, staying on this, with the Xbox Series S, Phil Spencer expects to sell more Xbox Series S's over Xbox Series X's in the long run of the generation of the console. And his reasoning for this is because he thinks over generations, the expectations would be that price really matters and that you would see the Xbox Series X sell more. Now, this makes sense because with every single generation of consoles, you have the people who pre-order them, like myself, who want to get the console on day one, want to be at the bleeding edge of technology for consoles and have them in their home, and they buy up all those pre-orders, and those are the people that are going out on day one. As we move through the generations, you see the iterations of consoles come out, the slimmer versions, the cheaper versions, and it's always the price leader that generally sells a lot better. One example I can think of is with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 at launch was the cheaper console. The PS3 was way more priced. And as the generation went on, you saw the PS3 release that slimmer version for a lot cheaper than the original PS3, and it was just a great deal. And then the sales of the PS3 really started to ramp up, and I think you're going to start to see that as well with this generation. But the only difference is now with the Xbox Series S, right off the bat, you're getting that amazing deal, that amazing price for a next generation console. So over the long run, I can definitely see it selling more than the Xbox Series X. On top of that, people are going to be using the Xbox Series S for a lot different reasons than somebody who wants to get the Xbox Series X, maybe a secondary console, and maybe a console to add on to the PlayStation 5. Now, he also wanted to talk about more about the Xbox Series S and how he said that it has surprised him in performance. One of the big things people are asking about and thinking about is the Xbox Series S going to be able to perform well with the next generation? One of the things coming in that worried a lot of people was Yakuza Like a Dragon having that 900p mode at 60 frames per second. And I've said this in, I think, 2 videos now before this, that I don't think it's anything to worry about, and I actually think it's just an anomaly, and we're going to see at least 1080p 60 FPS going forward and 1440p 30 FPS. Phil Spencer kind of touches on this, talks about the Xbox Series X and S launch game, the Falconeer, and it being a 60 FPS at 1800p. And I again talked about this in my previous video. I'll have a link to that video in the up here somewhere. But one thing he did go on to say was that it's kind of surprising with the Xbox Series S that they may have faster load times than the Xbox Series X because they're loading in lower res graphics. So we already know the Xbox Series X is super fast with the SSD in the system, and the Xbox Series S has that same SSD, but because of lower resolution textures, it may actually load games faster, which would be really cool to see how this works going forward. But he also goes on to recognize that there is a power difference in the RAM and the GPU and stuff like that, and that he does admit that developers are going to have to work harder to develop the games for both systems. So Spencer's saying, but absolutely it has worked. There's no doubt about that. The fact that you have 2 performance specs now, I'm not going to stand here and try to PR somebody and say 2 different specs is the same as having 1 spec. It's not. We're doing this because we want to expand scan the market. So it's pretty clear that Xbox just wants to get the Xbox ecosystem in as many homes as possible. They don't really care where you play at the end of the day, whether it's on PC, whether it's on the X, whether it's on the S, or even on mobile with xCloud. Now, one of the most interesting things that come out of this interview was they talked about Bethesda, they talked about acquiring ZeniMax, and focusing on if these games are going to be multi-platform or not. He was pretty blunt with this, but he was also vague at the same time. But I think you can get a pretty good deal that Bethesda's games are not going to be going multi-platform. They're probably not going to be coming over to the PlayStation 5 based off of what he said here, if you kind of read in between the lines. So he was just straight up asked, is it possible to recoup the $7.5 billion investment if you don't have Elder Scrolls 6 on the PlayStation? Phil Spencer said yes right away. But then he goes on to further his statement saying, I don't want to be flip about that. This deal was not done to take games away from another player base like that. Nor in the documentation that we put together was, how do we keep other players from playing these games? We want more people to play these games, not fewer people to be able to play these games. But I'll also say in the model, I'm just answering directly the question that you had. When I think about where people are going to be playing and the number of devices that we had, and we have xCloud and PC and Game Pass in our console base, I don't have to go ship those games on another platform other than the platforms that we support in order to kind of make the deal work for us, whatever that means. Whatever that means is that the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, all of the Bethesda titles are not going to be coming to the PlayStation 5. That's what I see when I read that. Now, obviously, things change, minds in the companies change, things don't go as planned, and then overall the direction will change and maybe they will release it. But when you read that, it's pretty much saying no, PlayStation 5 is not getting those Bethesda exclusives. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see, because this article also goes on and makes a great point that I definitely agree with, is that even if they do release these games on the PlayStation 5, it doesn't matter. People are going to go play them on Xbox pretty much. I mean, there will be people that will spend $70 to play these games on PlayStation, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter, because you're going to be able to pay $10 to get these games on Game Pass on day one. So why would you spend $70 for the PlayStation 5 version when you can just spend $10, get a subscription to Game Pass, and get them on day one? Now we move on to Halo Infinite, and there was no word of when we were going to be getting it. So Spencer says that he has played Halo Infinite a week ago, but there's no update right now on the status of the game. On top of that, there's no release dates for the Xbox Series S and X games, Everwild from Rare, Playground Games Fable, and Flight Simulator for the console. Furthermore to that, he was asked if they finish the Halo campaign or the multiplayer first, will they release them separately, or are they going to be releasing the entire game together? Here's what Phil Spencer said. Bonnie, who is the head of the Halo franchise, and the team will go drive those decisions. But I think we want to make sure people feel like they have a Halo experience. I think we can look at options like that. But yeah, I think that's something to think about, but we want to make sure we do it right. And like the article says, I took that as a maybe, I took that as a maybe too. I mean, he's just kind of not counting it out, but they may do that. Let's say if like multiplayer gets done way before the campaign is completed, or the other way around, they may release that. You never know. When it comes to Halo and the delay and everything, I am okay with it. I want the best possible Halo game. I want the best graphics that Halo can have with this version. I want the best gameplay that it can have. And if that means delaying it so that we get the best version when it's released, I'm 100% okay with that. Move on here to talk about the confusion about cross-gen exclusives, because as we know, Microsoft has been supporting cross-gen exclusives ever since they announced the Xbox Series X, and PlayStation was against it, pretty much saying there are 4 generations, then going back on that. And now we know that both consoles are going to have lots of cross-gen exclusives. In fact, it even says here that right now Microsoft is the company with more announced next-gen games that aren't also promised for the current gen systems. This is Everwild, State of Decay 3, Fable, Forza Motorsport, and Avowed. And here is Phil Spencer's thoughts on the cross-gen exclusives. I think we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. When we talk about a couple of years, it's just when we look at the roadmap of games and the things that we're building. That's what we see. And we're just trying to be transparent with people about the roadmap of games that would be coming for last gen. So, I mean, are these games going to come to the Xbox One? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, I wouldn't count it out. I wouldn't say that there's no way they're going to come to the Xbox One. But I mean, if these games are like 3 years down the road, there's definitely less of a chance that they will. Now, when it comes to storage sizes, as we know with this next generation, we're not getting that much storage for the size of the games. Storage is kind of going down if we want these speeds, and the size of games is going up, which is crazy to think about, but it makes sense because we're getting these really fast SSDs in the next gen consoles, and that's expensive. But the prices of the storage will eventually go down over the years, and we're going to see more storage coming to these consoles for a cheaper price, and we're going to see the price of expanding the storage go down as well. So Spencer just pretty much saying it's an issue even right now in the current generation that we think about file sizes of these games, which is true, and we're gonna have to think about that more with the next gen. But we've seen things that are able to get done, like with Sea of Thieves, we've seen Rare able to drop the size of the actual game itself so that you could have more storage on your hard drive. And Phil Spencer goes on to say that they're going to keep pushing those kind of initiatives for other games in the future. The next is Microsoft's Nintendo connection. As we know, Microsoft and Nintendo have actually worked really well together, especially with Minecraft, with Ori and all that kind of stuff, and allowing games that were made for Xbox go on to the Nintendo Switch. We've heard Microsoft saying right now there won't be anything else going to other platforms. We'll have to wait and see, because he has a quote in here that makes me think that maybe one day Xbox Game Pass is going to make its way over to the Nintendo Switch. Phil Spencer says it doesn't feel sustainable, basically talking about Xbox games going on a case-by-case basis to the Nintendo Switch, and going on to say, in order to really support it, I would want a full Xbox ecosystem somewhere. And that probably means things like Live and Game Pass and stuff. Now that tells me that he wants Game Pass on another platform. If somebody is willing to put Xbox Game Pass on another platform, Xbox games will be there. So even if PlayStation said, hey, you want Xbox Game Pass on the PS5? Let's make a deal. Now that's never going to happen, obviously, but let's say we're in a parallel universe here and PlayStation came to Microsoft and wants Game Pass, Microsoft will make a deal with them. And they would do the same with the Nintendo Switch, obviously. And I think the Nintendo Switch is probably the more realistic platform that Xbox Game Pass may end up one day on, especially with xCloud and everything. Like, they don't even need the power of the hardware for it to run. But it'll be really interesting to see how this ends up in the future, if it ever ends up on any other platform. Phil Spencer also talks about having xCloud on the Xbox One X maybe sometime in the future. He says they know how to get this done, but it's definitely lower in priority after PC and iOS. And this is going to mean, like, in a couple of years from now, when there's no more games coming out for the Xbox One, you're still going to be able to play those Xbox Series X games stream to your Xbox One. So realistically, the Xbox One may never die out if you are willing to stream all of your games. And finally, ends off the interview talking about why Microsoft is still in the industry. Because as we know with the Xbox One, the launch of it was pretty poor. They kind of took their focus away from games, and made it more as kind of an entire entertainment box with your TV and all that kind of stuff. But then when Phil Spencer took over, he brought Xbox back to being focused on games, and people now understand what the Xbox is for, and it's for playing great games. He reflected on the last 7 years, saying, I think the root that is getting gamers to trust in the motivations of why we're in the business, and that's the thing I thought we lost around the launch of Xbox One. It was people really questioning the why behind why is Microsoft here. And yeah, people definitely did when they did the DRM stuff, and even though they went back on that kind of stuff, it was just a bad launch, bad PR. PlayStation really took advantage of that in the last generation. But we can strongly say now that people understand what Xbox is about. People understand that Xbox is about getting great games to as many gamers as possible, no matter where you play, while building great gaming machines. Like, the Xbox Series X is clearly a machine built for gamers, a machine for somebody who wants to play games with the best possible settings on consoles. So if you like Xbox, if you're an Xbox fan, or if you're just getting an Xbox, it's pretty exciting, the future of Xbox. I don't think you guys have anything to worry about. And just in general, this next generation is going to be great with PlayStation 5 and the Series X and S. I mean, there's great games coming out everywhere. There's so many games to play. And I think that no matter where you go, you're not going to be disappointed. But yeah, this was just a really good interview. We got a lot of insight into Xbox, into the direction of everything. Nothing we didn't really know, but now we get a little bit of an update on Halo. We get an update on the Series S. But yeah, I'll link the article in the description below. It was a really good read. Let me know what you guys think about all the stuff I talked about in the comments below. The biggest burning question that I think we kind of got that answer to today was, are the Bethesda games coming to the PlayStation 5? At this point, I would say definitely not. Could change. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think they're going to be coming to the PlayStation 5? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new to this channel and you enjoy what you see, maybe hit that subscribe button, help me grow the channel. I'll be getting all the next gen consoles and making tons of videos on that going forward. So I'm really excited for the PS5, for the Xbox Series X, and even the Xbox Series S. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.